In this episode of Gridman, the Gridman Alliance just says, fuck it. Let's combine all of these powers together and transform Gridman into Super Hyper Mega Super Mode Gridman. I'm sure it has a shorter name. Greetings, my friends. Are you ready for some crazy superhero antics? Well, you're going to get a lot of it in this episode of SSSS.GRIDMAN, another episode which continues the battle against Akane Shinjo, the most moody little god you've ever seen, who's actually transforming a giant city to her will and taking it over with the power of giant kaiju monsters. And this time, the backdrop of this battle is going to be the cultural festival at the high school. Let me just go ahead and say this. Why does every fucking school anime series have to have the cultural high school festival thing going on? It's the same thing every single time. It's the same thing. The same montages, the same stupid maid cafes. This one has a reverse gender one. There's all of the same shit. Setting up for it, having fun, blah, blah, blah. It's just stupid. I'm sorry, I had to get that out there. I'm just sick of seeing the cultural festival thing going on in school anime series. It happens way too fucking much. And the thing is, it's exactly tied to the story of this episode, as Akane Shinjo has said that she's going to release a massive mechanized version of one of the monsters we've seen previously on the cultural festival, and in a couple of days' time, that's when the Gridman Alliance is going to have to face it. Most of this episode follows the characters as they desperately try to appeal to her sense of sanity and try to get her to call off her giant attack dog. That doesn't ever freaking work. The fact of the matter is, a monster's coming to the city and they're going to have to fight it. Most of this episode is the tension building up to that fact and showing us how much time has actually passed as the students are setting up for this amazing cultural festival. Without a shadow of a doubt, the best interactions, though, are between Rika and Akane, as Akane actually brings up the fact that Rika might not even be human after all. She might actually be a kaiju that was created by her. Or there's another throwaway line where it was a kaiju that created Rika. I don't know. It's a little confusing. The implication is that Rika is something that was created to be the best friend of Akane, and there's no way that she could possibly even think about betraying her friend. And that's really disturbing when you think about it, because we didn't get any resolution to it, and we didn't get any solid answers. Even after the big monster battle at the end of the episode, we get to see that Rika is still conflicted by the fact that she might actually be some sort of puppet that is being controlled. And this actually really makes a lot of sense and sort of justifies all of the scenes of Rika being kind of insufferable and being a very annoying teenager. Don't get me wrong, I like the character of Rika, and she might be one of the more realistic depictions of a teenager that I've actually seen in an anime series before, but she can get a little moody at times. But again, that's kind of the point of her character. But let's talk about the giant monster. Basically, they take the kaiju from the very first episode and they transform it into a mecha version of itself, which is to say, it's just loaded from head to toe with missiles and laser blasters and all types of crazy shit. And what I love is that this time they decide to actually preemptively get out there before the monster starts causing destruction. One, this is going to allow all of the citizens to evacuate in time, and they also come up with this crazy plan where instead of coming out like super giants, they come out at about half the size that they usually do. This way, every single member of the Neon Genesis Junior High can come out with their signature robots. They all combine together as one, and we get to see this super ultra combined version of Gridman. It's over the top in every way possible and totally gives me some massive Power Ranger vibes. Especially the way the entire battle actually goes, with them just crashing through everything in the city, flying in the air, and all ending with a big giant ridiculous sword attack. They turn golden, the monster explodes, and Rita Repulsa gets pissed off. The episode ends with a little bit of humor, which I really appreciated, getting to see that they're getting ready to go to the cultural festival and work at a reverse gender cafe. So if you ever wanted to see Utsumi in a French maid costume, here it is, in all of its glory. So what's the rundown on this episode of Gridman? You remember that scene a couple episodes ago where Utsumi said that maybe the kaiju that they're fighting against might be human after all? At first I thought that was just sort of like a subtle dig to Darling in the Franxx, as it's always the type of plot point they can bring up to add a lot of unnecessary drama. maybe that's actually what's going on here. Maybe all the people in the city really are inherently kaiju, or maybe they're kind of like Anti and they can release some sort of like giant monstrous form. I don't know. I only bring that up because of that big scene between Akane and Rika. Was Rika actually created by her? She does have the power of a god after all. She can manipulate the city and create giant monsters. Who's to say that she can't actually do that for the actual citizens themselves? And of course, the paranoia immediately sets in during that scene, and I think it might be one of the strongest, more emotional and atmospheric moments from the entire series. And considering it's a show about giant superheroes fighting monsters, that's a pretty big accomplishment to be able to do that within this span of time. That and the fact that these characters are handled in a pretty realistic way in the way that they interact with one another. They act like true teenagers, with Utsumi and Rika constantly fighting throughout most of this episode. It actually feels like something that would truly go down, and the way that they actually make up with one another actually does feel realistic and heartfelt. It really makes you care about these characters and seeing them more as just sort of like anime stereotypes. No, the anime stereotypes are the Neon Genesis Junior High students. They absolutely relish in their ridiculousness, and finally getting to see them all come together in this episode and transform together was a really triumphant moment. I wish we could have gotten more action in this episode, and that still continues to be one of my #1 complaints with Gridman, is that it sort of paints itself as this giant superhero action epic, and really there's collectively barely been that much action from the show. The good thing is that when it is there, it does look really nice. What is made clear in this episode is that no matter what happens, it looks like Akane is just going to continue her plan of being a crazy god and creating monsters, and it's going to take a lot more to actually convince her to actually be a good person. This is all going to tie probably into her relationships with Alexis Carib, the mysterious alien digital monster. I'd still like to learn more about him, and I have a feeling it's going to be one of those too little too late scenarios where they explain it in the final episode and it sort of lessens the impact. I'd like a little more build up to that as we get this much closer to the finale, which, believe it or not, is right around the corner. I believe this is only going to be a 12-episode anime series, and considering this is based on like a long-running superhero show, that's kind of surprising, but it's very clear they're trying to do something a little different with this adaptation of Gridman, and thus far I think it's been a really atmospheric and super awesome and punchy show. So I'm going to give this episode right here a solid 4 out of 5. A really good episode that was doing a great job of actually building up the tension and showing us that they are just not going to be able to convince this villain with words. They're going to have to use some pretty crazy actions, and it's going to lead to some fantastic action as we get this much closer to the end of Gridman. That's my thoughts on the episode. I'd love to hear yours, however. You can tell me all of them in the comment section below. I'll see you all next time, and as always, stay down now, baby.